Well, hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Crosswires. It's James, and this week I have a wonderful guest. We've had people on the show looking at retro technology. We've had Dan talking about the Amiga. We had to let Reese come on the show to talk about Atari, otherwise he would have never shut up about it. And we now need to bring in the chief cave dweller, the man who has... I can see Neil's literally laughing at my terrible jokes. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Neil from RMC Retro.
Hello, cave dwellers. You didn't tell me Reese had been on here. I might have changed my mind if I knew he'd been on here.
Only the highest caliber guests, Neil. Oh, wait, hang on a second. Oh, yeah. No, I see what you mean.
Thanks for having me on, James. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. I do just remember the conversation in your Discord, something along the lines, because I'd said, oh, I'd love to have Neil on the show, but I'm a little nervous about asking Neil because, you're this big YouTuber, you're this... Wait, maybe rephrase that big YouTuber. You're a successful YouTuber. There we go.
I'm a full-time YouTuber. I mean, success depends on how you measure success, but yeah, I'm making a go of it.
So, which leads us on into sort of the obligatory section of the show where I get my guests to spill the beans on how they got started in YouTube and maybe a little bit of your backstory.
Sure. Well, I've actually got open here my YouTube studio listed by oldest video first, because sometimes I need to remind myself. And the oldest video was actually uploaded on January the 1st, 2012. But I haven't really been around for that long YouTubing per se. I started the YouTube channel and I registered the name of the channel back in 2012 because I had to sell off my retro collection. And I was making videos partly to preserve the memory of the stuff because I was going to have to sell it. So the other part was I was going to list these things on eBay and I had to sell my collection. And I just thought, well, a lot of what I had was in such pristine condition. The only way I can convey that is to take some video and link that to the eBay listings. So that's what I did. And then I forgot all about those videos, left them on YouTube. And it was in 2017 when I decided to, hey, let's have a go at this being a YouTuber business and turn on the webcam and review some games and that sort of stuff. I started doing that and I realized actually, in those 5 years, I've accrued, a few hundred followers, a few hundred subscribers. So that was kind of useful because when I started trying to do it proper, I had this instant subscriber base accidentally rather than just starting from square one. And that did help, I must admit. And I got some funny comments just saying, "Oh, you're making videos now, then, are you?" I forgot I subscribed to you 5 years ago, and that's where it started. And the first video proper was a review. I've called it Game On. So I obviously had an idea that Game On was going to be the title of my review series, and then Combat Links on the Commodore 64, which is an old flight simulator. And I had the intention of reviewing old flight simulators and trying to connect with people that were into retro like me, because I knew nobody IRL that was into retro. I knew very few people that were even into computers and gaming where I was at the time in my life. So I was just trying to connect and I guess see if there was a community that I could be a part of. And in the process, yes, I've become part of many communities, but also this RMC community has grown around what I've done, which is probably one of my proudest achievements, to be honest, the community that's grown around the channel. That's been a really nice side effect of doing all of this. So, yeah, to answer your question, I'm getting a bit long-winded here, but 2017, decided to make YouTube videos to try and connect with like-minded people. Seemed safer than online dating.
Absolutely. I'm just trying to imagine an online retro dating scene. I like 5-pin DINs and 9-pin DP.
Oh, swipe right.
And I can echo, I'm part of your community. I'm in your Discord. For disclosure, I am a patron of Neil's. I haven't paid him any extra to come on the show. Not yet, anyway. And it is just a wonderful community. I've made some genuine friendships through that Discord server. And in fact, and sorry, Neil, I have to be honest and say I've probably got quite a few of my guests from people saying, "Oh, I'd like to come on your show."
Brilliant. Yeah.
Which is fantastic. And, we don't do similar content. My YouTube content is definitely not retro-focused. But I think it's fair to say that a lot of YouTubers like yourself have inspired me. There's definitely, as you can see in my background, well, Neil can see, you guys can't, but in my videos you'll see there's definitely a little inspiration.
I see. You've got the colouring book of retro computers there behind you next to a Dalek and a stapler. Is there something sentimental about your red stapler?
If they take my stapler, I'll burn the building down.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to have to remind me. I know where this reference is from. Remind
Office
me.
Space.
Office Space.
Such a good film.
There it is.
It's a very, and it's, again, that film's got a little bit of a retro because there's the old, somehow they blended macOS and MS-DOS into one operating system on the simulated screens. It was something quite special.
I do, no spoilers, but I do like the conclusion to that, how it ends. Karma comes through. Yeah.
Yes, very good film. Highly recommend it. So, obviously, you've been, let's say 20, so it's nearly 5 years since you've been doing this seriously, and I think it's fair to say things have grown quite dramatically in that time.
Yeah, I guess we've had momentum behind us. The first big kind of surge where the channel took off was with a series that a lot of people say they've watched when they talk to me, which was the Amiga 500 Trash to Treasure series, which was where I kind of moved on from trying to review games to tinkering with hardware to trying to get the collection of retro back together again that I had to sell in those earlier years on a shoestring budget. So that meant buying kit that was slightly broken or completely broken and trying to fix it up. And I thought I'd document the process of fixing them up. And I released those videos under the banner of Trash to Treasure. And people seemed to like that. And I think the Amiga one did so well because it was so personal to me. It was such an important computer to me. It was the second computer I had after the Amstrad CPC. And I hadn't revisited the Amiga for some years. And I was just exploding with nostalgia for the system when I made that video. Every part of me was just like, every shot that I lined the camera up for, even before I pressed record, I just sort of stand back and go, oh, that Amiga looks so good at that angle. I'm just going to have to look at this for a minute. I was so into that video. And I think that kind of passion and love for what I was doing shone through and was kind of infectious because a lot of people really liked that series. So we suddenly got a surge of about 10,000 subscribers off the back of that video. It was a huge bump for the channel, and momentum followed through from there. So that was the rockets that were strapped to the side of the channel and sent us on our way. Yeah,
absolutely. And that was a great series. I generally think that was the first sort of series of videos of yours I watched because I seem to remember searching on YouTube for Amiga 500 because I'd seen one in one of our local retro shops here in Bournemouth. But I saw one. I thought, could I get hold of this? What could I do? If I did buy it, I decided not to in the end. Unfortunately,
can you remember how much it was in there?
This is a thing that's kicking me. It was only £50.
£50. That was a good price. Yeah,
and I should have bought it, but I didn't. I think it was not in a great state, and I think it was only a 500 rather than... Because I had in my mindset that I wanted something AGA. I wanted a 1200, because that's what... I think, in fact, was in one of my submissions to the cave videos, was I lusted after a 1200. I had a 600 growing up, as we talked about with Dan Wood, but, I was thinking a 1200, but I looked at 1200 prices like, no, and I don't have that skill set to go in and carefully replace chips. It's just not something I can do. So fair credit to yourself, because it is fairly intricate going into those systems. You've got to be incredibly careful.
Yeah, I don't claim to be, a superior electronics expert in any way whatsoever. I'm a break fixer, and I'll always maintain that. And that's why I try and surround myself with brilliant people in that respect, to help me with certain systems, like Mark fixes stuff, like Richard, who owns an electronics firm in the floor below me in the cave. So, if I really get stuck, I can go, hey guys, can I have your collective experience and millions of pounds worth of tools to take a look at this, please? I'm very fortunate in that respect now. But, I do what I can and I learn along the way. And yes, it was less painful, I guess, to learn when you could pick up an Amiga for 20 quid or for £10. As the prices come up, the consequences of screwing it up become far more costly, and we don't all have a budget to take those hits. So, I don't blame you, but the longer we wait, the more those prices go up, don't they?
This is true. Really
the Amiga 500 that was in the Trash to Treasure series in 2017 or 2018, it was a bargain then, but it was £20 on a classified app that I found it on, and it included a Philips monitor. So it was just ludicrous. And then anyone who watched the series will have seen I got it home and realised it was the Chicken Lips version. So it was one of the very early 500s with a mechanical keyboard, which they stopped doing very quickly. Unfortunately, that keyboard didn't work, but I've still got it stripped and bagged up here for hopefully to get it working one day, or to, at the very least, give the keycaps to someone who needs it, who does have a mechanical keyboard or whatever. That's not going in the bin for sure. But yeah, £20, just an absolute bargain. And
you found some great systems. I mean, one of your most recent Trash to Trevor. Oh,
that's a series that needs to happen.
There we go.
Everything must be turned into a tortoise.
Yes. We should clarify, of course, for those who don't know Neil's channel. First of all, go and check out Neil's channel. That's the whole point of Neil being here. But Trevor is now, who was it who made that awful thing?
It was it Quick Shot? Let me have a look. Cheetah joystick. So it's a Cheetah joystick, a novelty joystick in the shape of a tortoise that you rest your hand on, a bit like a mouse. You'd rest your hand on top of it, but it's a joystick that you rock and roll around. Digital, it's not analog, and it just gives you instant RSI. But Trevor's kind of become a bit of a mascot for the channel. He hasn't appeared lately. We should get him into a video. I think people would like to see him again. Every now and then we get Trevor, and every now and then we get a book with Alan Sugar's face on it that appears, and a very bad impression of Alan Sugar happens.
I would love, one day, I have to say, Neil, love to see Lord Sugar turn up at the cave.
Well, here's the thing. Last year, just completely out of the blue and unprompted, Lord Sugar tweeted one of my videos out. It wasn't even a retweet. He'd obviously just been on YouTube going, I like the look of this video, talking about me and my old computers. And he tweeted it out. And I was like, wow, I was stunned. Of course I said, hey, can you come to the cave? Can we interview you? But no response there, sadly. Maybe one day. And he has been making noises recently about starting his own Amstrad museum, but I don't know how much he's really interested in the old computers.
It'd have to be a very wide museum.
A very wide museum for the CPCs, yeah. But he's a salesman first and foremost, isn't he? I'm not sure how much he's really interested in those old machines.
Well, it's the same with Steve Jobs. When he was still with us, Steve was not interested in anything from the past. He wanted to just move forward, and you can understand that. So, I mean, speaking of museums, that brings us on nicely to kind of the most recent development, because you were filming it in were you in was it like a basement office, or? So
those original eBay videos were my house basement, a very damp and dingy house basement. And then when I started doing YouTube, I was doing it in my spare room. So I had a 2-bedroom flat. I can tell you two fun facts about that flat. So when I started YouTubing, 2 things that you probably don't know are that flat had rats in the walls. Ooh. So I could hear them scurrying around at night, and I had to set traps to try and get them. And they were big rats too. And the other thing was there was a hairdresser's on the floor above me. And this hairdresser, it was a male barber shop, and he loved playing Justin Bieber all day and Drake, just over and over again. So there were times when I couldn't film because that music was booming through the ceiling. And these are the struggles of YouTubing that you don't hear about. So we had that, and that's where we did the Amiga video, and we started to get some momentum. And off the back of that, I then rented a basement office, which was just a few minutes walk away from the flat where I lived. So that was really nice. Walked past a coffee shop and a bakery in the morning, and started doing YouTube. That's where I became a full-time YouTuber. And then we find ourselves now, so Cave 4.0 as we call it, in this beautiful 18th century mill in the middle of the Cotswolds, which is declared it is officially an area of outstanding natural beauty here in the UK. I can't afford to live there, of course. I live in Swindon, so I've got a 30-minute commute to get into that beautiful part of the country. But, I love that commute, and I love coming down the hill and seeing our current location, which is this gorgeous mill. And we've got the top floor there, and that's where we reset up the YouTube studio, but also set up the exhibition space / museum, where we've now opened up to the public, so people can come and visit and see all of the machines that were restored and get hands-on with them and all the other good stuff that we've built there. Yeah,
it's been incredible because you did a whole series of, starting to build the cave after, because I think correct me if I'm wrong, the colouring book and getting people signed up to Patreon was in order to be able to launch that space.
Well, Patreon happened before that, and Patreon was what enabled me to go full-time. There was no intention at that point to say I'm going to build a museum when that happened. And the colouring book was when we formulated this idea of building a museum, and we said, okay, it's not cheap to build a museum, and we could do it on the monthly budget that we've got, but it's going to take years to get there, to get it done properly. And the sooner we can get it open and selling tickets, the sooner we can pay down what it's costing us to build this. So we concocted this idea to create a colouring book of retro computers. I couldn't tell you where the idea came from. It was just one of those crazy ideas one night. And we got talking to Stu Cambridge, who was the former artist for Sensible Software, who I'd worked with on a book that I'd written before called Retro Tea Breaks, which was a book of interviews with old game devs. So I spoke to Stu and said, would you be interested in doing a colouring book? And he absolutely threw himself at the idea because he's so pigeonholed sometimes into being a pixel artist. He really wanted to say, look, everyone, I'm an artist. I'm not just a pixel artist. So here's a chance for me to really show off my skills. And he did. He did a fabulous job on this colouring book. Lovely perspectives on all of the machines. The machines are all open, so you get the look of the outside, and you can also see all the capacitors and all the bits and bobs inside the machines. And that managed to raise on Kickstarter, I think it was £40,000 it raised, a huge amount of money, which I'm really, really thankful for. And I do know that everyone that bought that book, they weren't buying a colouring book. They were giving to help build the museum. And the colouring book was something for me to give back, because I don't like just saying, hey, everyone, give us some money. I want to build a computer museum. You've got to give some value to people. And so to create this lovely colouring book was a nice thing. And people, now that they've got the colouring book, they do seem to really value it, because one of the tiers was called Colouring in the Cave, where the top tier backers can come to the cave for a special day. And at the last one that we had, I asked the audience at the end of Stu Cambridge's talk, because he does a little talk, I said, how many of you have actually coloured in the colouring book? Not a single hand went up. And I said, why? And they all said, we don't want to ruin it. It's such a nice book. We don't want to ruin it. So I think that's testament to the quality of Stu's work.
Oh, absolutely. And we had, Stu. I think actually, I'll give Neil some credit. Neil's community, and the fact that, obviously you were working with Stu, and I took a little bit of a cheeky sort of, hey, I'll tweet Stu and see if he'd be interested in coming on the show.
Yeah.
And he was. So Stu was actually our first ever guest on this podcast. And, I have to admit, that was a really fun chat, and I did have to apologise to Stu for killing him many times.
Oh, yes, yeah, everyone has to do that, yeah.
It's just a ritual you have to go through with Stu. I'm so sorry for killing you, Stu. But you're right, the colouring book is beautiful, and although I don't think you can see them in the shop, they are in the YouTube videos. I backed the team with the little postcards. Which
nice. So you got the coloured in postcards.
Yeah, and they're actually, part of set dressing for when I'm filming. They're up on nice little pegs. Along with an old Dell Mini 9 notebook motherboard that I ripped out just to, sad set dressing, really. So, now I have to say to everyone, I haven't yet been to the cave, just because of logistics, but I've seen it in videos and, seen it come together from little things like the way you've built the desks for the machines, the tables in the middle with the,
They were cable reels that we
Yes.
took the ends off and sanded down, and we 3D printed a little R logo to go in the middle and stained it. Yeah, yeah, there's a lot of love gone in, a lot of thought gone into everything. Yeah.
It does look fantastic. How long have you been open to the public now for, Neil?
A couple of months now, so it does still feel pretty new and fresh. And so far, we've been open on Saturdays, where we do 2 sessions. We do a morning and an afternoon session. So we find 3 hours for a quick session people seem to like. And then we've also got some days where it's a full day session. So we encourage people to pace themselves a little bit more, but they still do seem to stick around for a full day. And then we've also had some private sessions like the patron days and the colouring in the cave days. So at the moment, it's just weekends. We do next Friday have our first coffee morning, and then we're going to have Friday evening, like hardcore gaming sessions, all about the high scores. We're expecting perhaps a bit more of a console crowd to come to that sort of thing. So we're going to try lots of things like that, and we're just going to see what sticks. We've also got our first guest speaker booked. So that will go up available soon, and that's Mike Daly of DMA Design and Lemmings and Grand Theft Auto fame. So he's going to come, and people will have a chance to see a Q&A with him. And
I do have an important question, Neil. Are you going to let Mark into that event, giving his views on Lemming?
Yeah, we'll have to lock the doors, not let Mark fix his stuff in there. And I think Mike himself has a strict rule that nobody's allowed to dress as a lemming. He's had enough of that. So we're still, we're still figuring it out. How do you run this exhibition? How do you give people what they want? And the way I see it, I'm not running an exhibition. I'm not running a museum. I'm running a visitor attraction, a guest experience. And the most important thing to me is how people feel when they go away. Have they come into the cave? Have they been able to switch off to the world and everything that's going on and just get lost in a few hours of nostalgia and joy and happiness, and speak to like-minded people, and pull some magazines out in the library and look at the covers. This is one of my favorite things to do. Look at the magazines, and I just find the covers so evocative because they take me straight back to where I was when I bought that magazine. I can remember the exact shop for every issue, what bike I rode there on, who I was with. It's funny how these memories stick. And I just want people to walk away from the cave, from their day there, and just feel really good about it. Tell people how good they felt, want to come back. So that's what I'm trying to achieve through all the hard work in the way the tables look, the desks look, making sure, we made a big thing about getting air conditioning in there because we really wanted it to be cool and fresh and not, a smelly nerd club. We wanted it to be really nice and inviting. If people want to bring partners along who are, or kids who perhaps aren't as interested in the hobby as them, they can still have a nice cup of coffee and enjoy everything that's in there,
And there is a lot to enjoy because you have a lot of original systems out. Things, like you've got the Amiga 600, personal favourite of mine. You've got just such a range. You've got a CPC, you've got, correct me if I'm wrong, you've got a BBC Micro.
Got a BBC Micro, we've got some various PCs. We've got the Sharp X68000 out there for people to play on, PC Engine, Master System, Amstrad Mega PC. We try and have a good mixture of the rare and the familiar. I tend to find what people want to play on is the good things that they remember that they had, the rare things, and the really awful things. There's no room really for that kind of an average system. Nobody's really interested in an average system. They want to see just how bad was the Amstrad GX4000. I want to see that. I want to go on that. Just how great was the Sharp X68000 that I've never had a chance to have a go on. And now I'm going to go and have a go on the ZX Spectrum because I'm so familiar with that. I want to go back into my own memories. That's kind of where it sits for people. So, you've got to think very carefully about what to put out there.
And you obviously have a decent stock, so you cannot, is a plan to alternate the systems every now and then?
Yeah, I've got to keep it fresh so that people have new experiences when they come back. There will always be the things that people expect. People are always going to expect to see a Commodore 64 there and a ZX Spectrum and a PlayStation and things like that. So there'll be the consistent ones. We have got this little bit of space at one end of the cave where we've got an R spray painted on the door, and that's closed at the moment. And what I'm trying to do is get that cleared out so I can turn that into a kind of rotating temporary exhibition space. So we could have all the hands-on stuff, and then for 6 months you might come and there'll be a semi-permanent Commodore or Amiga exhibition in that room, and you can go and see every single Amiga that was ever released, or light gun games, or whatever the theme is for that period. So that would be a nice thing to keep it fresh, I think. You've got to give people reason to come back. Yeah.
And you've certainly made a lot of use of the space, because not only do you have the systems, you also have, obviously, your studio space. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, in that studio space, you do display the current Trash to Treasure project.
Yep. You can come, when you come on an open day, whatever I've been working on, I try to put out there, because it's nice to make that connection between what you've just been watching and then seeing the thing in front of you. Yeah. And I really try to emphasize the hands-on point of this, museum, because we're trying to preserve the experience as much as we are the systems.
Yeah.
And you've got to use the real hardware to try and get that authentic experience. Very determined to use CRTs and not flat screens. It's inevitable that the day will come when we have to move on, but for now we're trying to preserve that experience with CRTs.
You've got Rob from, is it Retro Rescue?
Resurrections?
Retro Resurrections, doing a lot of CRT repairs for you.
Yeah, Rob's a lovely, lovely guy, and he comes down and he's so talented. He can recap any of my TVs, in less than an hour, but he'll make a good job of stretching that out through the entire day. So he can talk to people, he can show people what he's doing, and they ask everyone's got questions about CRTs, especially about safety. How safe is it to open this up? Should I even risk opening this? What can I touch? What can't I? He's got all the answers to that. He's a great guy. And invariably at the end of a day, I've got a fully serviced, recapped, recalibrated CRT that's looking great. And he'll take another one on and fix it back at home for his own channel, and then bring that back. And he's a great guy. Yeah. And these are the kind of people that have really helped the channel to get to that next step, to be able to be here. And I, thank God for the Robs and the Mark Fixes stuffs and the Richards of the world, who are so giving with their time. Yeah.
Because, aside from obviously Mark fixing stuff, you do have him locked in the cupboard in possibly, but I have to admit, the bit of the cave that I'm most excited to see, from seeing the video, it really does take me back to, I think you said particularly the influence was W.H. Smith.
Oh, yes. Yeah, the fake retro shop that we built. So, yeah, it's funny. A lot of people look forward to seeing that. And I'll often say to people, have you been in the fake retro shop? And they'll go, not yet. I'm saving myself for that. I'm going to play some systems, and then I'm going to compose myself, and I'm going to walk in and I'm going to enjoy that. And it's so lovely to see people do that, because it takes them back. It really does. So one thing I can't get across in the videos about the fake retro shop is the smell of it, because it's got all of these big box games in there. It's got warm electronics in the CRTs and the kiosk, and you go in there and it just smells like a W.H. Smith's or a John Menzies. I can't get that across in the videos. And I love it so much that I shut the door every day. I just keep the smell in there. I've got to keep it smelling like that. That's part of the authenticity. People love that.
So is that the next merch, Neil?
The smell, retro video game shop smells in a bottle.
Older retro.
Yes,
love it. And of course, look, we should say Neil and because I think Chrissy helped you with this, but you and Chrissy got featured in Raspberry Pi magazine.
Yeah, and I'm really thankful for that. Just last weekend, somebody said that's how they discovered the cave. They didn't know anything about the YouTube channel. They read about it in the magazine and they came and visited.
Wow.
And what James is referring to there is the barcode scanner, which is in the shop. So we've got a kiosk built into a lovely brown wall that looks like W.H. Smith's. And there's a CRT sunk into the wall. And then a couple of controllers that come out, just like when you used to go in an old shop and you could play on the latest games on a demo kiosk. Yep. But we've got a handheld barcode scanner there. So the idea is that the shop is the front end. So you pick up a game, you walk over to the kiosk and you go beep with the barcode scanner, and the game appears on the screen and you can play it. And it was just a silly idea this could be fun to do. And Chrissy had the skills to knock that up. and he did a wonderful job of it. He's put it all on GitHub for anyone who's interested in doing it themselves. And so as soon as, I guess, the first barcode scan that I did on it, the first time I used it, suddenly it clicked and I was like, wow, this is huge, because this makes you step away from having that endless list of ROMs on a screen where either you can't decide what to play, or you just play something for 5 seconds and you go, okay, I'm going to play something else now, because it's so easy to switch. It forces you to turn around, walk, even though it's only 3 steps away, to the wall, look at a game, take a game off the wall, maybe read the back of it and go, do I want to play this? Yeah, okay. And then walk back and scan it. And just that small amount of effort makes you invest more time in playing the game, even if it's a bad game. Well, I've walked over there now. I've got to put effort into playing it before I go back and change it. And it just takes you back to a way of playing games that is how I remember it. I love emulation in all its forms, but it does make it too easy to skim gameplay.
Especially if you are one of those naughty people who happen to have a Raspberry Pi running RetroPie full of games that there might be questions about the legality of those ROMs, and we'll leave it at that.
Hey, when you've got a fake video game shop, I'm sure I can find a legal copy of it somewhere.
Oh, yes.
Somewhere there on the shelves.
Absolutely.
But if you're using the barcode scanner, you can only play the games that you actually
That
have.
is true.
So,
it's true. And of course, that system, correct me if I'm wrong, is running on another sort of project over the last couple of years. I mean, you've been a busy guy, Neil, it's fair to say.
Yeah, I've been busy. So, yeah, you're referring to the MiSTer MultiSystem. So there's this wonderful project called the MiSTer, which lots of people will have heard of, which is a FPGA-based way of playing your old games. And we made what's called the MultiSystem, which is an all-in-one board that takes the MiSTer project and puts it into a consoleized form factor, combined it with a really nice console 3D printed case. And it just sort of makes the point of entry into getting into that project a little bit more familiar by making it a console and not a big stack of PCBs, and a little nicer to look at, and adds things like a SCART output as standard so that we can use it with our old CRTs without any dongles or, adapters or anything. And that's a project that we did in collaboration with Heber, the company that owned the building. And it's still early days. We've only just coming to the end of shipping our second batch. So we're getting up to a user base of about 1,000 people using that now. And then we've got batch 3 coming soon, which will be in stock and not a pre-order process. So hopefully have that in 3 to 4 weeks' time. That'll be listed up on the shop. And we can continue to build on that. And that's, I guess that's another sub-community within RMC that's growing now. You've got the RMC community, and now you've got the multi-system community growing. And within the RMC community, it's so nice to see the multi-system owners all helping each other with their builds and their configurations and things. This self-help room has now grown, and it's just testament to how nice people are in the community.
And I don't own a multi-system. It is, on my list of things to. It's definitely on my birthday list. I just don't know how many birthdays I'll have to. Because now I'm getting older. I don't get quite as much for my birthday as I used to do.
Oh no, shocking.
There's a big one next year, so we'll see what.
30 is it?
40. Thanks, Neil. Thanks. It'll be good, and that community is fantastic, because you and Richard just put out a video where you've got some more sort of expansion modules, things like be able to support the really cool. Is it the MT32 Pi, whichever way around the.
That's right. Yeah.
Which is basically a way to have a good old fashioned Roland MT32 in a Pi form factor that plugs into the multi-system.
Yeah, so expansion on the multi-system was something we thought about from the beginning. Just like trying to make the multi-system accessible, we wanted to make expansion nice and easy. And what's more familiar and accessible than a cartridge? Everyone knows how a cartridge works. You pick it up, you slot it in the slot, and it should just work. So we've got a cartridge slot on the multi-system, and our first cartridge is a Pi cartridge. So yes, I imagine the most popular use of it will be the Pi MT32 project. which works wonderfully with things like the PC core. So you can fire up Monkey Island and hear the MT32 playing beautifully. But it's just a Pi, so I can also run my barcode scanner project on it. And anything else that you can think of that you can do with a Pi, you can run off of it as well.
And I assume
that's nice.
The Pi is powered by the multi-system, so you don't have a separate power brick.
That's right. Yeah, nothing needs to be plugged into it. It just goes straight in. That powers it up, and it works. And it will route the MT32 audio back through and out the usual, audio channel. So you don't need to plug any extra wires into that. But you do have access to the ports. If you want to, you could plug. If you really want to, you could plug a mini HDMI cable into it to get a display off of it and a joypad, and you could run, Retro Pi off of it via a MiSTer, if you really wanted to.
If you really, yeah.
Another nice thing that I'd like to do with it in future is we've got the barcode scanner, but what if you scanned a game and then the Pi on its own display, on a separate display, put out a marquee or instructions for the game,
nice,
or a review or something like that. You could tie all that together. So there's options. And then we've also made a cartridge called the Super Video Custard, which gives S-Video and composite out, which is something that people on the American side of the Atlantic keep asking for. Seems that's what they're nostalgic for, S-Video and composite. That's what they grew up with. Yeah. So can't argue with that. So if they want that, there's an option for that too.
Because that was one of, and here we go again, sort of a reach of RMC and Heba has been, the MiSTer MultiSystem was featured on Linus Tech Tips.
Oh yeah, and LGR as well. Yeah.
Oh, you see, LGR doesn't surprise me as much because I sort of feel there's this affinity between yourself, LGR, the 8-bit guy. And maybe to an extent Techmoan. I feel that Techmoan sort of takes all the retro audio stuff and just deals with that stuff so no one else has to.
Well, we've done a little collaboration with him in the past, and he's always been very kind with his time, as Matt at Techmoan. So yeah, he's certainly, I would say, king of the UK retro community in that respect, or the audio retro community. Yeah,
I need to get in touch with him because again, some of his stuff I've been helping a friend sort of do a house clearance, and the amount of retro audio stuff that her late father had is incredible. So I should reach out to Matt and see if there's anything that's of particular rarity, because there could well be his equivalent of a trash to treasure going through there. But,
well, you say that. I mean, I watched a video of his recently. I was watching some of his older videos, and I watched the whole thing. It must have been about 45 minutes to an hour long. It was just him unwrapping mini discs.
Yes.
That's all it was. Yes. Just 3 parcels of mini discs. And I got to the end of it and I was like, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I mean, why am I putting all this effort into restoring and scrubbing and making systems look like new? I could just be buying cassette tapes and opening them.
Because of course you do still get donations into the cave, and you do. Well, yeah. You do a good. Your unboxings are always quite fun because you tell a little. Similar again, yours and LGR's unboxings feel very much like you can see the excitement.
Yeah.
When you get something out of a box. And
oh, I do, yeah. And actually, since we've had the public come into the cave now, people turn up unexpectedly with donations. Wow, we've had some amazing stuff. Because when people bring a donation on a visit, I guess it more often than not, it's something that they don't really want to put in the post. So it's something a bit more fragile or a bit more personal to them. And we've had, a couple of weeks back, we had someone turn up with a ZX80, which we don't have in the cave. So it's so nice to add that to the collection. We've got the ZX81, but not the 80. So we can, put that in the cabinet as something to display as well. Yeah.
Which one was the one that, there's one of the ZX which got made him a butt of a joke in a Red Dwarf episode. I think it was it's crashed more times than a ZX81, referring to Starbucks. I think.
Nice.
I mean, I've still got, Neil, somewhere at my parents' place, my old Game Gear. I've lost the battery covers to it. The screen, the outer screen is scratched to all heck. And, as with true Game Gear, the screen is now almost unusable. I am so tempted to take the plunge and just say, okay, shall I get the kit and do the upgrade? Because I've still got the games. I actually do have some Game Gear games up there as well.
Yeah, I've the two sort of greatest upgrades you can do on RetroKit are the SD card loaders, just because nobody's really that nostalgic for waiting 10 minutes for a cassette tape to load. You do it once every now and then, but it's lovely to have that instant load time. And the other is screen upgrades on handheld. So I did the McWill mod on the Atari Lynx, and it just makes it a whole different system. It reduces how much battery it uses. It gives you a screen you can actually see.
That was a big distinction, and that's why I have to be honest. That's why I chose the Game Gear back in the day, because it was something I could see. Of course, it didn't have that same collection of games that the Game Boy did, and but it is fascinating. And although I don't own any retro tech, I do have a Pi running RetroPie, and I love going back and playing some games. I have to admit, I have not yet quite figured out how to set up a proper Amiga environment on my Pi, because it's not easy.
It's tricky, and a lot of us who had Amigas back in the day, we had an Amiga and a floppy disk drive, and that we were happy with that. Yeah. So, the world of setting up hard drives on Amiga is unfamiliar to many people who even had an Amiga back in the day.
Absolutely.
So it takes a little bit of figuring out, yeah.
Yeah, because the 600 had a hard drive, it had an IDE slot, but I never had a hard drive in it, because back then hard drives cost almost as much as the actual system, if not more.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, as we sort of look for, so first of all, people can book to come and visit the cave. I know you're opening up more dates.
That's right, yeah. Go to rmcretro.com and click on the big button that says Visit the Cave. And you'll also see, you can go onto the YouTube channel, but if you go to the website, you can see neatly listed the 10 build videos, so you can have a look at the whole process of building the cave from start to finish, which is quite nice as well.
So, Neil, before we wrap things up, I do have one sort of question for you, which is, if you were to think back about all the retro repairs and bringing things back to life, and just general maintenance that you probably had to do, can you think of maybe the worst repair, as in, for one that's made you think, I'm really glad I'm wearing gloves right now?
I guess the one where the term finger gravy was first coined was probably the Acorn Electron. That was just really quite grubby, and there was this brown gravy type substance all over the keys, and that's probably when the black gloves first came out. So yeah, I'll go with that one.
I think that's a good one. We'll put a link to that in the show notes to the Acorn Electron episode. And that's the thing, you are definitely machine agnostic, I think is the right for it. You don't seem to mind restoring anything.
Well, I think people know, I have a love of Amigas and Amstrads and things like that. But there's a lot of lessons to be learned in systems that you're unfamiliar with, especially the really bizarre ones that were, for example, never launched outside of Japan and things like that. I find it so fascinating to research them. And invariably, in researching these systems, you then start to find the crossover with the systems you are familiar with. And you go, oh, right, so this such and such a system is essentially an Amiga 1200 with some other custom chips. It's, you start to make these connections, and you see how different and how similar retro systems were, and how close systems were to being awesome, or what let them down just by some weird cost-cutting exercise that they happen to do on a particular system. So I find it fascinating pulling them apart and finding out about them and researching their history and seeing where all that crossover is. It's an interesting world to be a part of.
And is it fair to say that that's what kind of makes retro interesting, is that in today's world of computing, it's, look, we have AMD, we have Intel, we have Apple's M1 series chips, but ultimately, we're all pretty much the same. One graphics card, okay, it might perform a little bit better and it might cost you thousands of pounds more, but at the very basic level, they are just the same. Whereas when we go back to things like the Spectrum and the Acorn and the BBC Micro, there's such differences in most platforms, and there was such a rivalry between owners. Speccy owners probably did hate CPC owners, but there was that Commodore versus Spectrum argument, certainly Amiga versus Atari. Do you think retro is maybe more interesting because of those differences?
Well, yeah, hate is a strong word. A lot was said in jest on the playground, but I don't think we went too far into hate too often. But yeah,
Wait,
we
hang on
used to trash talk.
So you're telling me that your school didn't have a massive murder problem with Oh.
Oh, the specky owners would take the mickey out of me as an Amstrad owner and whatnot, but it was all in jest. It was all good fun. But yeah, it's very easy to put the rose-tinted glasses on, isn't it? Because, yes, we're nostalgic for those days, and being part of that, I guess it was almost like supporting a football team. We were part of that tribe. We were part of that owners club. But actually, what we were reading week in, week out in our magazines was we're a step closer to standardizing and being compatible across the board. And that's what everyone wants, because it will make for cheaper, more accessible, better computing if everything just worked on everything. And of course, that's the direction we pretty much went in eventually. So that is what we were striving for, and that is the future that we expected. But now that we're in that future, it is nice to look back and go, I kind of liked being part of the Amstrad tribe, being able to trash talk the Spectrum tribe when on the rare occasion I had a game that was better than them.
Well, folks, please do go and check out Neil's YouTube channel. Neil, where can people find you? Where can people go and check out YouTube and all the RMC Retro site, everywhere like that?
So rmcretro.com will take you to a website where you can find most things, or pretty much any social media platform or YouTube. Just put a /RMC Retro on the end, and you will find my smiley, bald, bearded face waiting to talk retro to you.
Neil, it has been an absolute pleasure to chat. Thank you so much for your insights and for sharing some of your story and hopefully getting people excited about the cave. If you've got any retro stories that you want to share, maybe some nostalgia about old systems, please do leave a comment in the podcast episode. You can find all the show notes at crosswires.net. You can find our YouTube channel, which honestly there is a video coming, at crosswires.net/YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter at crosswiresmg, and you can email podcast@crosswires.net.
Until the next episode, thank you for listening, and goodbye.